everyone, and welcome to this special Christmas edition of the Strategic Leader podcast with me, Gemma Bullivant.
And with me, Fee Craig. We have been, as everybody tends to do at this time of year, we've been reflecting on what's happened this year for us professionally and on the podcast. We've been casting our thoughts forward to what's coming up next year, what's going on in the industry. We've basically been getting off that dance floor, that Christmas dance floor, have we not, Gem, and onto that Christmas balcony to have a good look at what's going on around us. As we reach the end of the year and head into the Christmas holidays. So everything we're doing today has been inspired by zooming out, get on that Christmas balcony and have a good look at what is happening all around us. How are we going to share what we've noticed?
Well, as we've been on the balcony, we've noticed a few things that are recurring themes, I would say, and also some key signposts indicating some clear direction of travel that we should probably be conscious of, take notice of, and use those to help inform the type of focus, the type of activity, and kind of where we intentionally want to show up in 2026 in the world of HR and people leadership. And I've basically grouped them into a little call it a fairy godmother or Santa's wish list.
Santa's wish list. And I think that's interesting, isn't it? Because they're not predictions at this stage, really, are we? It would be nice to say this is coming. But I think we acknowledge that some of these are moving very slowly, maybe at a glacial pace. But we would love to see these move meaningfully next year.
Yes.
And if we were able to kind of move the dial on some of them just a little bit in our workplaces, we would all be in a much better place, even though we acknowledge that we probably won't get all of them in our Christmas stocking this year.
Indeed.
So talk us through this list. What would be number one on your Santa's wish list for people and leadership initiatives moving forward into next year?
So number one for me is performance management, the age-old challenge, that gnarly old problem of performance management. It is not going away. If anything, it is the number one thing that has come up in lots of different projects, client work, coaching conversations. I even had a conversation this morning with a client who said our PLC board are starting to ask questions about how we're managing our performance. I mean, it is on every single agenda from top to bottom.
I
Is
agree.
how can we better encourage performance, whether it's performance management or, and this is wish list number one, what I would love to see is a shift to performance enablement.
Now that's a term I haven't heard before. So what's performance enablement?
Well, I think, when I think about managing performance, that language takes me instantly into a retrospective mode of have I done what I set out to do?
Uh-huh.
And so you are immediately drawn to that and almost looking too much in the past. It sends your mind to evaluation, ratings, that ping pong argument of are performance ratings good or bad? Had various conversations about that. Whichever direction you go in, the idea of performance management very much takes you into that quite evaluative mode, I think. And even where you're looking into the future, it is setting KPIs. It isn't really about developing and growing and to use the word enablement and enabling performance to really thrive in an organization or a team or for yourself.
So I really like that word enabling because it just forces a completely different set of questions, doesn't it? Which is, what do you need? Also, it shifts responsibility. I always think with performance management, if I'm the team leader or the people manager and I need to performance manage my team, it feels like the responsibility is on me. Whereas performance enabling, it asks the question, well, what do you need in order to perform really, really well? And also it begs the question of, what does good performance actually look like?
Yeah.
What do we agree? Are our expectations of what that looks like the same? And we kind of create it and describe it, then you know you've got an agreement on that. And also
Mm.
it's like, okay, so I know what I'm aiming for. What would enable that for me? I think I really like that word.
Yeah, I like the word too. You touched on it earlier in terms of who owns the performance. Is it up to the manager to set up a performance conversation? Is it up to the individual to set up a performance conversation? Discuss.
Yeah.
I believe I believe it's up to the individual to
Yeah,
lead it.
I agree, definitely.
But the term enablement also involves this idea of flourishing and building on your strengths and growing and developing and so it isn't about achieving a defined set of KPIs. Yes, they are important, but
Mhm.
it's stretching yourself beyond a point that you were last year, leaning into your stretch zone and really kind of growing those skills. And I think we need to get clear on what we mean by performance. So, something you just said before, I've had two client projects this year, broadly based on developing reward systems to help drive and incentivize and reward strong performance. Both organizations really clearly wanted to drive a high performance culture
Mhm.
and to have, the systems in place as they saw it, the reward systems in place to enable that to happen. And where we got to in both of those client projects was, okay, so first tell me what your definition is of high performance. And neither could actually articulate it because it was just not something that they had sat down and really thought about.
Yeah.
It's almost one of those questions where you go, okay, well, everybody knows what high performance is. Well, no.
You have a good breakdown for what high performance actually looks like, though, don't you? And I think you've talked it through on the podcast. Certainly, I know I use it
Mm.
because it has 4 components, and I just think it's so useful because it's not that difficult. It's just that you need it sort of setting out in this really simple way in order to break down what good performance looks like.
Yeah, so that is skills. So what technical abilities, interpersonal abilities do I need?
Yeah.
Behaviors, so how do I actually operate? Am I living the values? Am I actually getting the results in the right way and in the way that we're comfortable with as an organization? Effort. Am I working hard?
Yeah.
I
Yeah, yeah.
used to get this all the time. Oh, I gave them a pay rise because they've worked really hard this year. And outputs, what are the measurable results being delivered? And if we've got those 4 components, skills, behaviors, effort, and outputs, we can then start to articulate what performance looks like and what strong performance looks like in those areas. And just very quickly, before we move on to the next one, just going back to these 2 clients that I mentioned, when people assume that we all know what high performance is and we don't need to define it, and then I look at 2 different organizations who define high performance in very different ways, I can start to really challenge that notion because in these 2 clients' cases, one was quite consistent, steady delivery, focus. There was quite a that type of energy, and the other was entrepreneurial, creative, going the extra mile, doing bold, brave things,
Mhm.
which almost brought me to my mind of, like, the hare and the tortoise, you know? And
Yes.
I know that in that case, the point of that story is that the hare isn't always right, but the idea that actually you've got 2 different ways of getting to the finish
Mhm.
line,
Yeah.
2 very different characteristics of performance, and you've gotta get really clear on what your key characteristics are of performance before you can go anywhere near enabling performance to happen in a meaningful way in the organization.
Yes, I really like that because that brings in, like, the purpose of the organization, the dynamic, the cultural dynamic,
Yeah.
cultural norms, values, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, so that's what we've got is this shift in direction from performance management to performance enablement. I think there's so much that we could think about in that one. Give us another one, Jem. What's another big ticket item on your wish list for next year?
Well, yeah, big ticket item on the wish list is pay transparency, really underpinning a change in trust and culture. In other words, We know, if we've been keeping an eye on these things, that the EU Pay Transparency Directive is coming into force in June next year. Doesn't cover the UK legislatively, but certainly in terms of the talent landscape, and any company that operates with either competitors that have got footprints in the EU, or if you actually have an aspiration to operate in the EU at some point, you need to be mindful of this. Now, pay transparency is not a new thing, but it was previously a fairly optional item to help drive stronger trust and culture and help underpin some of the other things we know that employees really value. And so, my wish really is that pay transparency is much more than a compliance tick,
Mhm.
and that it actually serves as a prompt for us all to get behind it from a trust and culture perspective as well.
That sounds amazing. And if you are more interested in an in-depth view of the pay transparency, then we do have an episode on that in series 4. So you can go back to that one and check on that one.
We do, and I've also got quite a lot of resources on my website that you're very welcome to download as well.
Brilliant. Thank you. So pay transparency, what else have we got that is looming large that we would like to see really flourish and support everybody when it's used properly?
Well, I don't think anything would be complete in any of these realms if we didn't pay a little bit of attention to AI.
AI, now what's that? Yeah, I wonder if anyone's
Um,
gonna have any kind of end of year roundup of anything that manages to not mention AI somewhere.
yes, so I might take a big gulp of my mulled wine before we go into this one.
Well, I've just literally used it before coming on this call. So what are we talking about with AI? I mean, again, we have talked about this on the podcast in series 4 as well, but specifically, what would you like to see in an
My big
overarching way?
Yeah. Yeah, my big wish is that we resist the temptation to let it lead us.
Yes.
It is very, very tempting to get used to using tools to the point where we rely too heavily on those tools.
Yes.
And I can make lots of parallels across everywhere, not least, the moment we started using a calculator, we lost the ability to do mental arithmetic. Now, you might argue doing mental arithmetic is not a particularly useful skill anymore, and I'm not necessarily one to argue with that. But we do need to keep our human aspect, the human dynamic in our working environment. The nuances of human decision making, the impact of a human being from an empathy and relationship building perspective, the human in terms of somebody has to drive these machines. So who's the person that's working with it? We need to use it so it helps us enhance our judgment, not be the tail wagging the dog. It's got to be driven by us, not the other way around.
I would say, I mean, we could apply that argument to kind of any part of the business, but particularly in the HR people function, we've got to keep the human in human resources, and we need to make sure that the humanity is retained.
And, in many ways, in the evolution of the workforce, we haven't really spent enough time yet in that whole emotional intelligence EQ phase for us to have fully established those skills and ways of working in a way that I feel comfortable with. I think that is a constant challenge for HR teams and people-centric leaders who really genuinely buy into this stuff. Is actually, we're still quite nascent in that whole EQ aspect, and AI really does have this. There's a risk that with AI, we're going to lose sight of that before we've even had it properly
Yeah.
instilled.
Yeah. How can we provide the right data to a very sophisticated tool when we don't actually know what the right data is ourselves?
Absolutely, and one of my biggest worries about it at this point in time, I have quite a few, But one of my biggest worry, and I love it, by the way, I'm not a skeptic. I just think we need to be really, really mindful about how we adopt it and use it and where it plays its role, is the inevitable top-down pressure, whether it's shareholder pressure, whether it's leadership, founder-led pressure, of the opportunity to strip out cost in a business by automating certain aspects of it through AI, and in doing so, either underestimating the impact of that on our customers and on our employees and other people with whom we interact, but also the extent to which we're stripping out a layer of the talent pipeline that we will then become really unstuck in 10 years' time or
Mm,
less.
mm.
Because where do our junior people learn their skills if there isn't that layer anymore to enable them to actually watch and observe? What do they do until they become the old enough to be, or if age is the thing, but in that next level up? What's gonna happen there? I'm really concerned about that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Okay.
my wish is that we're not led by it. It also means that we are really thinking about our workforce design and blending roles rather than stripping out layers of the organization without thinking too carefully about some of these wider impacts.
That's a good one. I very much like that one. It's not a big thing to ask for, is it? I mean, we can put it on our list. Let's see what Santa can do. So let's have a look. Let's move forward then. What else have we got? We've got a few more things on this wish list of ours. So, what is the next one that we have got down? I know this is about EVP. So, talk to us
EVP.
about EVP. Talk to us specifically about total EVP. What is that? And what does it replace? What is it better than?
So EVP, if you're not familiar, is employee value proposition. It is all about the broader employee experience. What do employees value in what you have to offer as an organization in its broadest sense, in its every all the reasons an employee might join, stay or leave the organization, your team, whichever level you're looking at this from. And total EVP is a term I've started thinking about a bit more because it comes from the concept of total reward and my landscape of reward and HR and the fact that it is broader than pay and bonus. It is, to use that phrase again, all the reasons an employee might join, stay, or leave. So I've been blowing the trumpet of total reward being that phrase, and I actually am now minded to the fact that really it's a bit more like total EVP, that
Mm.
the value of the role is partly in pay and other monetary factors, but it is also in, do I have development opportunities? Is the culture of this organization right for me? What do I make of my opportunities to grow and develop here? How flexible is it? Does it align with what else I have going on in my life? And all of that, the above and more, whereby that employee value proposition is at the heart of what it is that we're trying to define.
And as you're talking that through, the fact that you can start with it one side being pay or pay and reward, but actually it's much broader than that. I'm reminded of the notion of intrinsic and extrinsic motivators. And there
Mm,
used to be the belief that people were motivated extrinsically, which was pay, bonuses, monetary rewards, or maybe status type rewards. But those are extrinsic rewards, the things that we get after having done the work. What about the things that motivate us whilst we are doing the work, those intrinsic motivators, which have been proven to be far more important in the overall motivation mix? So things like mastery. So you said skills progression. Do I have the opportunity to get better at my core skills here? And autonomy. Am I going to be micromanaged, or can I seize the initiative and can I make stuff happen here on my own, or, in conjunction with other people? But do I have enough agency to make a difference here? So what we've got, autonomy, we've got mastery. Purpose was another one of the big three that were identified, weren't they? And I think it's the work of Daniel Pink. Purpose around, does it kind of support the things that matter to me? So that idea about flexibility and, does it fill the right space in my life? Does it Does the overall purpose or vision of the organization matter to me? Is it something I can get behind and give it,
Mm.
everything that I've got to support it? Do I have a sense of belonging? Am I kind of supported at a human level? So I'm really reminded of that kind of idea of total EVP as supporting that extrinsic motivators of pay and bonuses and so on, and the intrinsic motivators that
Absolutely.
sometimes are harder to quantify, but they do give you that full 360 experience of being somewhere, of being in a team or working for somewhere, which, some of those things are harder to quantify. So that feels really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Dan Pink stuff is really important to stay connected to that autonomy, purpose, and
Mastery.
mastery idea is, is pretty central to all of this. You're absolutely right.
Well, that sounds like a good one. We totally wish for that one. What else is on our list as we come to the last couple of things that we are asking Santa
So
for next year?
last couple of things, and we won't spend too long on this because we've all got mulled wine to get back to. But number 5 is all around leadership development and actually what that means. And I'm reminded here of some of the conversations we had about what are the skills of 2030. I think we had an episode on the World Economic
World Economic.
Forum,
Oh, yes, we
Paul.
did. Yeah, top 10 fastest growing skills by 2030. Other than the sort of the big data-driven ones we've got and technological literacy, we've got in the top 10 creative thinking, resilience, flexibility, and agility, curiosity and lifetime learning, leadership and social influence, and talent management. And so they all come under that leadership agility, the ability to be able to think. You've already mentioned emotional intelligence, but that's heavily involved in all of these
Mm.
leadership development skills. It's those, oh God, we always have this debate, don't we, about whether we call them soft skills or not. The hard skills, the skills that sort of emanate from you as a person and who
Mm.
you are,
Mm.
that are becoming more and more critical.
And the key thing here for me is agility, flexibility. We are not in a linear world anymore. We don't start a career and linearly follow it through to its conclusion. We are actually being pushed and pulled in multiple directions, managers and employees alike. And this concept of agility, I came across a term last year, Renaissance mindset. And this concept of the Renaissance mindset being a sort of an extension of the growth mindset, so Carol Dweck's work, but Renaissance mindset's nothing to do with Carol Dweck. It's a different idea. But it's almost building that expectation that things are gonna change. So where
Mm.
growth mindset is something where you welcome it, Renaissance is you expect it. And it just is a growth mindset 2.0 really in many ways. So we might do a little bit more on that in the coming episodes.
Because it strikes me that, I'm still talking to organizations where you're hearing things like, I wish things would just stay as they are. So that's not
Mm,
even growth mindset. Or I wish we
mm.
just would have a period of stability. I wish everything would just calm down. I'm just waiting for things to calm down and for things to stop changing. And you kind of think, blimey, life's going to be really hard if you're sort of hoping that nothing's going to change, because of course it's going to change. Nothing's going to
And
stay the same. I mean, it never did really, but the pace is speeding up so much that you have to lean into it, like you say, not just be fine with it, but expect it and look
absolutely.
for it and deal with it.
Yeah, and we're in the UK, aren't we? And how many prime ministers have we had in the last 10 years? Like 6 or something? And I know France have had a similar little flurry, and lots of countries are going through quite a lot of political turmoil and unrest. The economic landscape is quite tricky. There's lots going on from dynamics in different countries. These change is happening all of the time and at pace, and it is never really expected to calm down. From this point on, I think we can and should be expecting that the environment will be in a constant state of change. And so we need to develop that emotional agility to deal with that. And we need our leaders to have that in spades.
So I really like that idea that the only way to deal with instability is by agility. So
Mm,
it's not by trying to stabilize something. It's by agilely responding to those changes. Um,
Yes.
I'm thinking of trying to, well, do you know, I'm thinking of learning to surf, which is something I'm doing at the moment. The only way you can deal with, you can't deal with the wave conditions by being rigid. You
No,
can't respond to something like that. You'll just go in. You have to respond to the unpredictability and the variety of the waves by flexing, right? Flexing your whole body, but particularly your lower body. And so rigidity and staying the same, it just isn't a thing. It's not like I'll get in position and stay there. That's just not a thing. It's just constant flexibility and agility, being able to move through all of those different positions that creates stability.
that's a fantastic analogy, and it's funny because my mind was going to your surfing as well, because I happen to know of
My
that
incredible surf career, yeah.
really random thing that you're doing in the thick of winter. But the the idea that you would learn one stance and that will see you through any and every possible wave permutation, I would
Mhm.
imagine, not being a surfer myself, you have to learn different ways of approaching those waves.
Mhm.
And the analogy extends into the business world, right? You don't just have one way of doing something. You have to have an adaptable toolkit to be able to flex to the waves as they crash through the organization from time to
Yeah.
time, day to
Yeah.
day,
Yeah.
hour to hour sometimes.
Which they do. So
Great analogy.
we like that idea of agility as a leadership development focus rather than rigidity to cope with those unstable moments. Okay, so wrap us up then. Wrap up our wish list for next year. What have we got? What's our last one?
So the final one is the hill that I will die on when it comes to HR, which is HR is not a transactional governance compliance function. But what we need to do is move our thinking from being reactive, governance led to proactive, and I'll use the word again, enablement. It is part of the shape of the future. It's actually being a culture shaper, if you
Mhm,
like,
mhm.
to lead the way on how we want to do things and how we're going to get the best out of ourselves and each other. So we're really tapping into our expertise as behavioral psychologists.
Mhm.
Whether we have that qualification or not, we certainly usually have quite an understanding of it. If we want to lead people in any kind of meaningful way and we don't have that, we should be really actively curious about it. Let's keep moving the HR function along that continuum of being more proactive, more strategic, more transformational than a compliance team.
And I really like the idea that they are shaping and creating and modeling the behavioral the optimal behavioral approach within the organization.
Yes.
Because that tends to come down from the leadership team. And that's not always the best. We've talked many times, that's not always the best behavioral model. It's very, very influential, but it's not necessarily the best one. So imagine if the HR function was as influential at shaping the behavioral norms of the organization and leading
And if
it,
we
defining
a
it, and saying this is what it needs to be for the future. That would be an amazing place to get to.
absolutely, and if we use it to flash through as a quick recap, thinking about moving performance management to performance enablement, well, HR can lead the way on that conversation, that attitude, that culture shift. Whether it's something small like your development is owned by you, employee, as opposed to expecting your manager to be the one in the driving seat, through to more macro organizational, thoughts and beliefs and systems. Pay transparency, redefining trust and culture, very, very much on that kind of proactive, strategic. It is not a compliance exercise alone. It is actually something that we define as a culture shaper. AI, how we interact with that, again, that is very much a culture shaper. The idea of your total EVP, that's in the heart of the culture, and how leaders see their role and embrace their role through a lens of agility, adaptability, and versatility rather than skill mastery, or I now have a tool to give feedback to my employee. Um, this is something that we can really shift the dial on.
Well, you've created a really compelling vision of the future. I wish that were HR director of the entire world, and then I could come and work for you. But that will be my wish. But since we don't always have a fairy godmother who will come along panto style and grant all our wishes, we could just hope that we can keep chipping away at some of these ideas,
Yes,
give you some thoughts, give you some resources, give you some places to start thinking about it so that you can shift the dial a little bit where you are and just build some momentum behind some of these things.
absolutely. So, thank you for joining us on our Christmas party balcony. I hope that you have found some useful thought prompts in that discussion. But we are squirreling away on Series 5, which will be coming out in early 2026. And we're going to be taking a look at the senior team, what it is, what it involves.
So, thank you so much to all of you for listening this year. We really love hearing from you. So, keep in touch. We wish you a very Merry Christmas or a Merry seasonal time, whatever you're up to at this time of year. Hopefully, you'll get a break and a comeback to 2026 full of momentum.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Thanks for
Bye.
listening.
Bye.
Ho, 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 ho. Merry Christmas!